Hi everyone, welcome back to another Authenticity Life Coaching video blog. In today's video blog, I'm going to be talking to you about how to heal your relationship with your inner critic. Now, we all have an inner critic. The inner critic is that part of us that is overly judgmental, overly negative, overly focused on all the things that will go wrong or that could go wrong. Now, let me just say that this part of us is vitally important. It's a really important part of who we are. It's a really important part of our survival. So if you think back in time to the days where we were cavemen and women and we were hunting and gathering, we relied heavily on this inner critic, which is also could be called the inner voice of fear for our survival. That inner voice or that inner critic let us know when things in our environment look threatening or suspicious or to be wary of. It allowed us to identify threats and to get to safety very quickly. So it served its purpose as part of our intuition. So that inner voice, that inner critic, that voice of fear is not bad. It has its place, and it actually serves a really important purpose, higher purpose in our life. And you could say, in a sense, that our inner critic is often balanced by the other side of us, which is always sunny and happy and always looks for the positive in people. You know, we all have those two sides of our existence, of our inner being, the inner critic and the positive voice, the praiser, the voice that is positive and constantly looks for the good in things, in ourselves and others. And so these two parts of who we are obviously that make up the whole, and they're essential to our evolution and our growth. Now, what tends to happen for a lot of people, and this is something that I experience, when I work with a lot of people talk about not being able to overcome their inner critic or struggling with their inner critic. And what I say to them is, your inner critic is not going to go away. You can't just cut the inner critic off. You can't bury it, because then it's going to run your life and sabotage your life even more. Usually when our inner critic becomes overwhelming and it sabotages our life, it's because there is some element of shame, some element of trauma, some element of our past conditioning that has had a heavy influence on our ability to feel safe, on our ability to take risks, on our ability to be vulnerable, on our ability to feel safe, going out of our comfort zone, all of these things. We may have had an experience of sorts that caused us to feel like we could no longer trust ourselves, that we could no longer trust the world, that it's no longer safe to be who we are, to be authentic, to express ourselves vulnerably, whatever it might be. And those early experiences often trigger us and cause us to get stuck in this self-sabotaging, overly critical, negative voice, this inner dialogue that takes place. So in this video, I'm going to share with you how you can heal your relationship with your inner critic. And so that you don't go forward from this video seeing it as something bad, you start to see that your inner critic is an important part of you that you need to love, that you need to embrace, that you need to find the gifts of and learn from and evolve with and understand more fully. And when you do that, your inner critic will stop sabotaging your life. I've seen it so many times myself, and like I can say personally in my own journey, that when I started to really love and embrace my inner critic and that overly negative voice, and I understood where it came from, and I started to have compassion and love and ask what it needed, my whole relationship to that part of me changed, and as a result, my mind became a lot more quiet. I experienced greater degrees of peace, a greater degree of presence and love. And so, again, we have to remember that this part of our being is not bad. And in this video, I'm going to share with you some processes that you can go through to heal your relationship with your inner critic. I want to share with you also some of the things that create our inner critic. So where our inner critic is created, where it comes from, and why we create it in the first place. So let's turn the page here. So the first question I want to answer is, where does your overly critical inner voice come from? Now, like I said, there are a few different places in which our overly critical voice can originate from, but understanding fundamentally that we all have that inner voice, that critical inner voice, but when it is really extreme to the point where it's debilitating, there obviously are some deeper underlying causes that are driving that inner critic or inner critical voice that is now sabotaging or causing a lot of suffering in our life. And so the first place that we're going to be looking at is our past conditioning, okay, and our early childhood experiences. So it's important to understand that this inner critical voice is often a byproduct of our subconscious programming. So as children, when we're in that really subconsciously programmable state, we are very receptive to having these beliefs and experiences that are going to have a big effect on our core beliefs about ourselves, about if we're worthy or not, about what we can express and not express, about is the world safe, are relationships safe, is it safe to express who I am and be who I am. So there's so many different things that happen on so many different levels at this young age, and we learn this in a big part from our primary caregivers, our parents, our family, because these early experiences are so highly subconsciously programmable. They program us to have the blueprint, if you will, for our further relationships that we experience in our adulthood. Now, it's also important to remember that that blueprint is not only a blueprint for our relationships to other people in our life, it's a blueprint for our relationship to ourselves. And so it works both ways. Now, as children, if we have primary caregivers or parents that are highly negative, highly critical, angry, and don't accept anything that we do or criticize us or judge us or point out the negatives in everything that we do, if we've had a highly stressful environment where we weren't safe to express how we feel or what we wanted or what was authentic or true, because it may threaten our sense of survival, maybe it threatened our need to belong, maybe it threatened our emotional needs, whatever it might be, maybe it threatened our sense of attachment to our parents. If that was the case, then what tends to happen as a result of that continual subconscious programming as a child is when we become an adult, we internalize our parents as this overly critical, internal, negative voice. Okay? So the inner critic becomes internalized, and it's almost as if we have our parents sitting on our shoulders whenever we have a different experience. They're there to have their say. And this overly critical or controlling voice can come in. That can be quite judgmental, harsh, and can invalidate a lot of our positive and empowering experiences if we don't understand why it was created in the first place and how to begin the journey of healing our relationship to our inner critic. Now again, I want to say that it's important to remember that our inner critic is not the enemy. It's our relationship to our inner critic. It's our ability to understand our inner critic, understand why we created this inner critic and what purpose, what higher purpose it served in our life. Because as children, our inner critic may have kept us safe from saying things that caused us emotional pain, from doing things that caused us emotional pain, from experiencing more emotional pain, abuse, or withdrawal of love and affection. Or it may have also prevented us from experiencing the withdrawal of our attachment needs. Okay, now that pain is primal, and it's so, there's, as a child, if we have a choice between not expressing ourselves authentically and experiencing a withdrawal of those attachment needs, we're always going to choose to not express ourselves authentically, to not stir up trouble, to not cause a confrontation or a conflict, because we have to rely on our parents for this for our attachment needs, for a sense of love and belonging, for sustenance, for emotional and physical safety. All of those things, we rely heavily on them to feel those things. So if we do something that directly creates conflict and causes the withdrawal of those things, then we know fundamentally that we aren't going to survive. So we will shut down a lot of our authentic needs, our authentic, inner voices, and we will create this inner critical voice that will become the protector so that we don't cause ourselves any more pain and suffering. And we allow ourselves to survive to meet our attachment needs, okay? And this is really the core of a lot of people that experience a debilitating, overly critical inner voice. And it was the case for me. Definitely a lot of those things correlated very heavily for me on my own journey on understanding and loving and embracing my own inner critic. Okay, so let's turn the page here. So let's look at how your inner critic might sabotage your life, okay? So the first thing I've written here is it keeps you stuck in fear and shame, okay? So that is really, one of the fundamental things that your inner critic can do. When it becomes overwhelming, it keeps you stuck in fear and shame. Now remember, fear and shame are the same pathways in the brain. It's the amygdala that is responsible for those reactions. So that pathway in our brain is constantly triggered not only by our own behavior and our associations with and fears about our own expression of our own behavior, but also it gets triggered by the behavior of people externally in our environment. And so these associations in the brain, sensory associations with different elements of the way people behave and act, trigger the amygdala, the fight and flight response, which also causes us to, go into shame, fear, and guilt, a lot of those emotions. And so this inner critical voice, can often sabotage us because we have so much associations with the external environment and with our own internal environment of the things we feel like we have permission to say and express, and the things we feel like we can't say because we're going to threaten our sense of safety, emotional safety, physical safety, or our survival. Okay, so if we get stuck in this overly critical inner voice, it's going to sabotage our life because we're going to stay stuck in these cycles of fear, guilt, and shame, which are going to limit our ability to express ourselves authentically and be vulnerable in relationships. Okay, so the next thing I've written here is that this overly critical voice can diminish our sense of self-confidence, okay? So it can make us feel unconfident and unworthy of being able to experience certain things. Remember, this inner critical voice can have lots of different ways in which it sabotages our joy and our happiness. The next thing I've written is it stops us from taking steps towards our goals in life, our important goals that everyone has, whether it be with relationships, financial goals, career goals, family goals, connections, whatever it is, that part of us can stop us from being able to move comfortably or freely into those experiences. It can prevent intimacy, it can prevent connection, it can prevent sharing and feeling love with people. It can prevent us achieving the things that we love to achieve in our life, the things that bring us joy and make us feel excited and alive inside of our soul. So the next one I've written is it stops you from taking important risks and moving outside your comfort zone. Okay, so this is again something that is very common when we have this overly critical internal voice that is constantly judging and shaming us. It prevents us from taking necessary and important risks to step outside of our comfort zone in life so that we can experience the unknown, so that we can experience joy and creativity and new levels of awareness, new levels of achievement and accomplishment and healthy things that are part of a normal amount of growth. So the last one I've written down at the bottom there is that diminishes your ability to experience gratitude and joy. So when we are stuck in that overly negative voice and it's overwhelming, it diminishes our experience of joy and our experience of gratitude. It stops us from being able sometimes to be able to express that deep sense of gratitude towards ourselves. It stops us from being able to receive love from others genuinely. When it's a genuine receiving of love, it stops us from being able to give love fully. And on so many levels, it just prevents us from this deeper connection to ourselves and others. Now, I'm going to turn this over. And this is where we're going to start talking about how to heal our relationship with our inner critic. Because again, your inner critic isn't bad, okay? Now I wanted to share this with you again. Now I did obviously talk about all the ways your inner critic can sabotage you, because I want you to understand not only how the inner critic is created, but how it can start to sabotage your life in different ways, so that you're aware of those things, so that you can start valuing and seeing the importance of developing a healthy relationship and loving and embracing your inner critic. So, you know, when we embark on this journey to healing our inner critic, we have to start by developing the awareness and understanding that our inner critic is not bad. It served a purpose. Now, even as children, if we experienced an overly judgmental, negative, and critical parental figures, even that in itself is part of what we have to unpack and heal our relationship with in order to be able to heal our relationship with our inner critic. Now remember that your inner critic served you. Even as a child in those experiences, it served you. It kept you safe. It stopped you from causing yourself unnecessary suffering. It allowed you to survive and you know, get through. It allowed you to maintain your attachment connections with your parents so that you had sustenance, so that you somewhat had your needs met in varying degrees depending on the experience you had. So it allowed you to meet those needs, okay? And even if it's running your life now, particularly if it's running your life now, it is still meeting certain needs inside of you. It's still wanting to protect you. It's still wanting to keep you safe. It's doing what it's meant to do. And when you understand that it's trying to protect you and keep you safe, you can have a much deeper degree of compassion and love for that part of yourself, okay? Now there's a few exercises that we're going to go through here that help you heal your relationship with your inner critic. Okay, so the first one I've written down is finding the gifts of your inner critic and how it serves you. Okay, so a really empowering exercise to do if your inner critic is taking over and sabotaging your life is to ask yourself, what are the gifts of my inner critic? How does it serve me? How does it serve me in different areas of my life? What are the gifts? What are the benefits of this part of me? Okay, so we've already talked about how your inner critic is part of that internal voice of fear that helps keep you safe. Okay, it is a part of your intuition that also helps you recognize when something is dangerous or when something is not okay, when there's something wrong. Okay, so I've had lots of clients talk about experiences where they had an intuition which was a negative kind of feeling like something was off about a certain situation, and their intuition was spot on. So fear is an important part of our intuition, and our critical negative inner voice is part of that fear mechanism. So if we understand that that part of us is also there to keep us safe, it's also there to help us recognize threats, things that maybe aren't in our best interests, help us recognize drawbacks, help us to recognize situations where we are probably not going to be honored and respected and heard and seen. And it's just there to sometimes help us, keep us safe. And it's also there to help us from doing things that may cause unwanted negativity and withdrawal of love and affection. Okay, so start looking for what are the gifts of this inner critic. Okay, so positive or a normal amount of critical thinking is really, really important when it comes to general life decisions. Like our inner critical voice also helps us understand, weigh up the pros and cons of a decision. Okay, so it helps us understand, is this decision going to be good for me? What are the drawbacks? What are the things that I haven't seen about this decision? Okay, because that is important for us to make a decision and to know if this is going to be the right thing for us, the right experience, or the right thing for us to do. Okay, so go through and look at all the different gifts of this part of you. Where has it kept you safe? Where has it stopped you from making decisions that weren't in your best interest, that weren't authentic for you? Where has it protected you from unwanted judgment and negativity? How has it kept you safe? How has it served you in different areas of your life? Sometimes people that are in business that have great capacity to have this negative critical thinking are able to see the problems in a business and find solutions a lot quicker, because if you don't know what the problems are, you can't find workarounds or solutions. So some of the most intelligent people are the people that have a very enhanced inner critic, or an ability to see some of the negatives or the drawbacks. Okay, so again, go through, find those gifts, keep working on it. I guarantee that if you do that and you do it properly and you keep going till you start to feel that inner sense of gratitude and love for that part of yourself, and this can take some time, so spend as much time as you need, but I guarantee if you keep going to that point, you will feel nothing but gratitude and love for this part of you. And that's the point that you want to get to, because that means that you have integrated that part of yourself into you. And you will start to feel a deeper sense of peace, a deeper sense of compassion, and a much greater sense of integration with this part of yourself. It will no longer be this part that you try to disown and run away from. It will be something that your relationship now is healed with. And when you heal your relationship with your inner critic, it no longer runs your life. It dissolves, because it always is there to serve a purpose. And when you love it, it realizes that it doesn't need to run your life as much anymore, because you now have integrated it. You've found the gifts, you've loved it, you've appreciated it, and now it feels safe to let go. So the next exercise you can practice to heal your relationship with your inner critic is having a dialogue with your inner critic. Okay, so some of the things you can ask your inner critic when you have a dialogue with your inner critic is asking your inner critic what it needs to feel loved and to feel safe. Okay, so asking your inner critic, like getting into a quiet space, like a meditative space, and asking your inner critic, what do you need to feel loved and what do you need to feel safe? Okay, and just sometimes it may even help to create a character that is your internal negative critical voice, to ask it, what it needs to feel loved, to feel safe, and to heal. Okay, you'll be amazed at what your inner critic will say when you ask it those deeper questions and you have this dialogue with it. So the other thing you can ask is, what is your higher purpose in my life? So asking your inner critic when you're in this meditative connected space, what is your higher purpose in my life? How do you serve me? Okay, and the last one I've written there as part of that dialogue is you ask your inner critic, what do you want to say to me? Okay, what do you need to say to me? What do I need to hear? What are you there for? What purpose do you have in my life? What are you there for? And then also another really powerful thing is to thank your inner critic. Once it's given you a message and you've had that dialogue, to thank it for who it is and to thank it, appreciation and love, so that you're healing your relationship with that inner critic. And I guarantee you, if you do this genuinely, if you do this authentically, if you do this from a heartfelt space where you really feel and see the connection and the gifts of this part of yourself, it will change dramatically your relationship with your inner critic. So please like and share this video, and please comment in the comment section below. I'd love to start a discussion about this. I'd love to talk more about it with you and hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.